Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20. Joining me for an NRL bye-week news and para podcast, my good mates Sixties and Clint. Fellas, no first grade action this week, but plenty to talk about as always. And before we get into it, as we always do, go around the table and see everyone's travelling. And I'll start with you, big fella. Sixties, how's it going, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm going really well, and everything's great in paradise. And
Well, that's a dubious statement, I suppose, but it's
What's your definition of paradise?
yeah, it's
it was. That was a tongue-in-cheek statement. Another. Recording podcasts after a Parramatta loss. We have to smile. We have to have a few giggles and laughs and what have you, because to do anything else is to plumb to. Well, we know that we're going to probably hit further depths this year. That's just the. I don't know about you fellas, but I've accepted that. I've accepted that. Reluctantly, unhappily, angrily even, that we're not going to win too many more games this year. And it's a sad state of affairs. I shouldn't have used the word accepted. It should be more that, unfortunately, that's what I think is likely to happen at this stage. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we get to celebrate a few wins, but we know it's going to be another early finish to the season this year. So
60s has clearly got the hair dyed black and the comb over the eyes there, Clint. He's getting a little bit footy emo now, and I understand why. But are you in the same sort of feeling or environment?
Oh, yeah, look.
Don't lie, Clint, because I saw the expression on your face all through the game on Saturday night.
Yeah, look, I was I wouldn't even say subdued, I was pretty apathetic, wasn't I?
Yeah. That is probably the apt word. Yes.
And,
you were.
I kind of accepted our fate after the loss to the Bulldogs on King's birthday Monday. Realistically, we needed a win there, and then likewise back that up with a win against the Roosters. But we're still being competitive in those two games, and I don't want that to sound like an exception for mediocrity or by any stretch of the matter. But at the same time, prior to Mitch and Gutho's return, we were getting some scores put on us. So being in the competitive ballpark, all things considered, and everything that's going on at the moment, isn't the worst thing. And we can kind of watch the rest of the season knowing that there isn't really any consequences. And hopefully, and we'll get into some of this news a little bit later, we see an empowering future on our horizon with a coach hopefully appointed soon.
Yes, indeed. So without any further ado, quick shout out to the sponsor of this show, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta. Thanks to Greg and the crew for keeping the lights on at TCT. Let's get into it, boys.
News team, assemble!
And usually we start with the weekend recap. Let's go something different this week and look at the coach search as the Eels start to zero in on who's going to be the new commander-in-chief in the blue and gold. And we've got, by way of the media, some updates this week, fellas, and it's been ruling out candidates one by one. We had Michael Maguire, I think, excuse himself like Billy Slater, both Origin coaches, not interested in the job. But this week we had Jason Demetrio and Michael Chaker, or at least by way of the media, so we don't know if this is official, but apparently knocked out of contention, leaving only two. And I think we'll be pretty happy if the two final candidates here, if the media is spot on, boys, because we've been banging on about going in a new direction, not taking the retread on not proven, but known coaching option that's either had success or failure to some degree at the NRL. And if the media are right, it's down to Jason Ryles. and it's down to Josh Hannay. So I'll throw it over to you first, 60s. Probably the way we envisaged it playing out going back weeks and weeks and weeks now, but we are down to these two allegedly. Are you happy with either option, or do you have an inclination towards one?
Look, I thought it would, as you indicated there, we both thought it was going to come down to these two candidates. And look, I think with some of the other fellas that were being discussed, it was a case of, well, look, if you're going to go in that direction, why on earth did you move Brad Arthur on? Because I thought clearly Brad has performed far better as a coach than a couple of the other coaches who have been there and done that. But if they were going to go in what they were talking about as being a new direction, then it was going to be a case of taking on someone who was a rookie NRL coach. Now, when we get down to the two of them, I don't know that I've got a clear favourite myself. Now, the reason that I say that is when you're talking about a relatively rookie coach, there's not too much that you can go on in terms of results. There's you're talking about people who have primarily been in an assistant role. So what do we know about any coach that's been a coaching assistant? Can you base their credentials on the performance of the first grade team they've been associated with? Or do you put that down to the head coach? I mean, I guess most people are going to say they put it down to the head coach. So what you have to look for there is references from the people that the particular coach has been an assistant to, people that he's worked with. And that, of course, comes down to the Parramatta Eels to do their job in that regard, to get as much background information as they can. I think probably Josh Hannay's had the interim role. He's had it a couple of times, hasn't he?
At Cronulla, yeah.
He's had it at Cronulla. Did he also have it at North Queensland?
Maybe a few games.
I think you might be right. And he's
Yeah.
also got the Origin experience too.
Yeah, so we've had Jason Ryles, who's been assistant coach at the Storm. Was he also assistant coach at the Roosters?
Yes,
Yeah.
there was a bloody feud over him and his services a couple of years back, I believe. When
Yeah. So if I'm looking at who has the edge in experience in terms of being a head coach, I guess that's Josh Hannay, just getting his nose in front. But really, we're not privy to the sort of fact finding and opinions of those around those particular candidates in the same way that the Eels are. So I guess we're going to get one of the two, and we'd have to assume that whatever's happened when the successful candidate is named, that they've done a very good job in communicating their vision of the club, that they've done a very good job of communicating what they want from the club. Now, this is really important as far as I'm concerned, because it can't just be a sell of the coach in that interview process. Obviously, any interview is going to be selling why you are the best person for that position. But for my way of thinking, in this instance, it's got to be more than the coach that changes. And I think that's stating the obvious. And I think the coaching candidate has to also be saying that. I think he needs to be talking about, obviously he's going to talk about the things that would excite him about working with the Eels and what he can do with the roster as it is now. But he also needs to be very firmly stating his case about what needs to change. And I'm not just talking about the roster, I'm talking about processes. Because everyone knows that the Eels' processes aren't working as they should be And for mine, that is the main issue. We don't have a top 30. We haven't had a top 30 for the last 2 years, where the process of getting players to sign on the dotted line is either notoriously slow or it just doesn't happen, where we just haven't recruited. If we've been in the market for players, we just haven't recruited them. So I would like to think that the coach is going to be putting his foot down, even in the interview process, to say, look, this is what I would want.
Clint.
And if you want me as a coach, you've got to be providing me with this.
Yeah, I think that strong personality is part and parcel of being a good head coach, isn't it, Sixties? And if I turn to Clint now, since Craig's done such a great job of covering what will make or break the two head coaching options, given that the media has it pegged down to two, it's obviously a close run for Clint. Is it as simple as, in terms of a tiebreaker scenario, which coach can deliver the recruits fastest for season 2025? I mean, which coach is going to be the most aggressive to poach from their respective club or from the NRL?
I mean, that could absolutely be a factor. One of the things I put to you guys a couple of weeks back is what problem are we trying to solve in our recruitment of our future coach? Sixties touched on a potential problem there, and that's a problem to me that's not isolated. And I know I'm preaching to the choir as I say this, but that's not isolated to the head coaching role. He is but one contributing party to that situation. But if I would be disappointed if it comes down to exclusively the presupposition you point to me, 40, because that's not long-term thinking. That's just trying to get an immediate result and throwing, quite frankly, throwing some shit against the wall and hoping it sticks. This needs to be considered from a short, medium, and long-term position. To me, if you ask me what problem are we trying to solve, I think that we have a little bit of a leadership capability gap that we need to breach. And, part of that is speculation and also just going off on what I view and see watching our games, because, I'm not privy to being in attendance at the training sessions, or, I'm not in the inner sanctum there where I know the inner going-ons of everything within our NRL playing group. But it looks to me from some of the challenges that we've had on the field that, what we'd really benefit from is someone with strong leadership skills and is a good man manager. Now, are Josh Hannay and Jason Ryles, respectively, those people? I don't know. They're complete unknowns. So, I would hope that they have some of those qualities and those credentials, because to me, that's part of the skill gap that we need to close. It's also why I'm a little bit disappointed if the report is accurate, that it's down to those two, that someone like Michael Cheika has been not considered for the role, because I personally think that is a strength of his and a skill that he brings to the table. Now, he comes along with a lot of other risks that would have to be managed and considered. But, we can only go off the information that we have at the moment. It seems it's down to two. So I hope, as a part of this continuing due diligence process, that those are some of the things that are considered at the forefront of the decision-making process.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where and when the Eels make their final decision. Again, as we've spoken about for some duration, fellas, this needs to happen as soon as possible, with due diligence, of course, being done, because the Eels need to be able to kick into gear for next year. We will wait and see, and knowing our luck, it's going to be posted first thing tomorrow morning. But if that's the case, maybe we can sneak in a little update to the podcast before it goes live. Let's.
Can I just say, John, as well? You talk about how we need this as soon as possible, and it's really because the Eels supporters, and we understand the processes that they have to go through in recruiting a coach. We understand confidentiality, the fact that they would have been trying to avoid a media scrum on interview days, all that sort of stuff. What I think the Eels have to appreciate is how supporters are feeling at the moment. And it's very easy, I think, for a club to be focused on what they feel is a priority for what they have to do. And undoubtedly, getting a coach sorted is a priority. Mind you, I think there's been other priorities that we've missed the boat on this year. But getting the coach is undoubtedly a priority. Now, what's happening at the same time is that supporters are feeling out of the loop. Supporters are feeling let down on match days with the performance of the club. It's and to an extent, and I hate to say it, but Clint, you know how bad. Like, I honestly, I thought that match day against the Roosters was one of the more infuriating days to go to that I've had recently. And I spoke to John about it in the podcast, the Instant Reaction podcast. But I know you were on board. How much did it feel like they were taking the piss with the recorded chant?
It's infuriating to hear it, and anyone that sits around us knows that I probably don't have the temperament that I have on the show when I hear that recording played, because there's definitely some expletives that come out of my mouth that go, "Why? Stop!" It's like we pick the most tense moment, the moment that requires the most amount of focus in the game, and go, here's a good time to put this to put this across the loudspeakers and potentially distract the players and try and tell the fans that they should be cheering. The fans will decide when to cheer, because it's something that organically happens. That is the role of a supporter. We're very, very comfortable in our role in doing that. So we will decide when it is that we chant. We don't need to be prompted by a recording or anyone that's up in the control box. And I get that the people that are doing those jobs are just following. They're just doing the job that they've been told to do.
Yeah, protocol.
Yeah, they're the hype people. But Clint, what about that one that went for about 90 seconds? I think there was a set restart.
I think we had a set, defended a set, and then had a set again.
Yeah. So it was about 90 seconds of the Eels attacking, 2 sets on the Roosters line, and it was just on loop. And it was like, are you serious? Like, it wasn't as if it was almost like this one. It wasn't trying to get the crowd to chant along. It was actually trying to create an atmosphere for the players. That's what it's the only thing that they must have been thinking, that this is what they're trying to do, because it was actually quite absurd. So but so look, I understand we understand, because we're supporters ourselves, that supporters are frustrated with not knowing what's going on. It feels like there just isn't the communication that we would want. Now, when I say we would want, as I said before, there are limitations to what the club can do in regard to coaching and letting people know what's happening with the coach selection process. And people wanted it as quick as it possibly could be. You know what? The first mistake was a mid-season sacking. Let's just be blunt about that, because as soon as that happens, you got problems for a start. And if you haven't got it sorted, like the club thought they had Bennett sorted, they didn't, but they still went through with the sacking. I didn't agree with the sacking. Everyone knows what I think about where we were heading in terms of not having the roster where it should be. I thought that was a bigger issue. I thought there wasn't too much more that BA could do with the roster that he had, minus his main stars. But anyway, that's all old news. But as soon as you make a mid-season sacking, you're going to be resigning your fate for the rest of the season to it being an also-ran season. And that's basically what it's turning out to be. Fans are frustrated with that. Fans don't like being consigned to a nothing season with so much of the season left. And you're only going to get an absolute miracle for the team to be able to provide anything past round 27 this year. It's just not going to happen. So There is a lot of frustration out there. I hope the club understands that the fans are naturally frustrated. If they weren't, there'd be something wrong. If the fans weren't frustrated, there'd be something wrong.
And speaking of frustrating, let's take some quick hits. And I stress quick since we don't need to go into the carcass this one too bad. From the round 15 wrap-up, fellas, Eels in action, 3 grades. Obviously going down to the Roosters, 28-18 in the NRL. Moses Brown, Talangi scoring for the Blue and Gold up against Ponga Jennings, a double to Tupou, and Angus Crichton also scoring for the Tricolours. Sixties and I already had a big old instant reaction podcast about this one, Quint, so I'll mostly ferry your reactions for this one. What were your takeaways from this contest that the Eels did so well to get back into and then frustratingly let slip through their fingers?
Well, it was exactly that, John, because we obviously had a poor start, and the Kelma Sim been hurt, but we stabilized pretty well after that and got ourselves into a position where we were leading, and you're kind of hoping that we would go on with it from there. But I remember sitting in the stands there, 60s on one side to me and my wife on the other, and my wife turned to me and said, "The boys just look like they've exhausted all of their energy in getting into a position to lead, and now they're running out of puff." And I think there was 2 quick tries that happened in the around the 65-minute mark or so, and also I think there was one potential try scoring situation that went begging, that Angus Crichton threw the ball forward in an attempt to offload it. The Roosters were coming, and look, they're a quality side. You're always in for a game when you're playing against the Roosters. So our situation, our circumstances considered, I think we did reasonably well. And you can cop a loss like that, but at the same time, it's still bitterly disappointing to get yourself in a position where you've endured the adversity, you've got yourself to a lead, and then you let it slip.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair summation. And unfortunately, some of the same issues that have sort of dogged us down in other parts of this season in terms of that inability to close out the final quarter of a game, rearing its ugly head again. The good news is that the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg fared much better as they continued their seriously impressive mid-season resurgences. Cup playing the Curtin Raiser out there on Saturday, prevailing 28-20 after being down, was it 14-4, 12-4? Can't try and look at the things here. Yeah, so Griffey scored in the 32nd minute, so I think they were down 14-4 at one point and managed to come back and win 28-20, with try scorers being Jake Tungor, Reece Alderton, a double to Zach Sini, and Isaac Lumi scoring on the buzzer to put the game beyond doubt. And then for the Eels, this lifts them into half a win back from the provisional top 6 placings in the competition. They're on 7 wins, 7 losses, chasing the 6th place Panthers, who are 7 wins and 1 draw. Warriors 8 wins, 1 draw, so they're a game and a half ahead from there. But honestly, it's a pretty congested from where the Eels sit in 9th place, 7 wins, 7 losses, right up until 3rd in the ladder, which is 8 wins. The Eels are suddenly right back in the hunt here, fellas, and you were out there. Well, 60s, you caught the back half of the game because of our pre-game show.
Yeah, I have watched
and you've had a chance to go back and watch the
half,
footage.
the footage. Yep,
I'll let you give us just a final say on what we saw out there on Saturday. Okay,
well, it was a very, very average start from the Eels in this game. Let the Roosters get off to that lead, and a combination of errors and I don't know, just not attention to detail. And look, that there was a little bit of an understanding about that because they were missing a couple of players, and including Matt Arthur, who's been probably the outstanding player at dummy half this year. But I thought Manny Luke did quite a serviceable played quite a serviceable role at dummy half and got into the groove of the match. He's done very well up to this point anyway, coming in off the bench for Arthur, normally around the middle of the second half. But he played obviously the majority of the game. Got Riley Smith came on in the second half in the same fashion that Manny normally does. So I thought he had quite a strong game. The Dan Keir and Zach Sini were probably my pick of the performers in this game. Zach has taken his game to a different level at fullback. He's a player that probably wouldn't have come into consideration for a spot at centre or wing because he's had a few defensive issues. But at fullback, he's really he brings a lot of the attacking momentum. His work in yardage is good. He's elusive when he gets an opportunity to run the ball. So, look, I thought they were outstanding. Matt Dury's got to still be pushing his claims for first grade. Same with Charlie Geimer. But I think it was a case against the Roosters of they got the job done. There was nothing special about the performance. They just basically got the job done. So, but of course, they were only one of the lower grade teams that won on the weekend. John, there was also the Jersey Flegg team getting their 6th win of the last 7 rounds.
And a far more comprehensive result here with the Eels running out 30-8 victors out at New Era Stadium. This one was at Saturday, I believe, 3 o'clock or thereabouts, 3:10 maybe kicking off. And again, the backs featuring prominently on the scorers list here. Bo Newlands opening the scoring in just the 2nd minute. He followed up with a 14th minute brace. Tink and Brown getting the big fellas on the board in the 19th, and then it was all Muhammad Al-Madeen from there for Hannay from the 40th to the 62nd minute. 40th, 50th, and 62nd minutes combined. Arpa Tweedle through from 6 off the tee. This was a great result for the Parramatta Eels in this grade. And they're still chasing the top 6 in this one here, fellas. They're in 11th place with 6 wins and 8 losses, chasing the 6th place Manly Seagulls on 8 wins, so still 2 wins back. But like 60 said, all they've been doing across the last 2 months is winning. And you keep doing that, and you're going to be in the mix sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think were the Roosters in about 5th or 6th place prior to being beaten by Parramatta? I've got a feeling they were.
Yes, they slipped down to 7th place with the Seagulls jumping them, so 6 and 7 getting reversed there.
Yeah, so just quickly on that game, very strong performance from the Eels forwards, some of whom won't be in the team this week when you go through the team list because there's some players returning. Sam Tuivasa-Sheppard's been included despite playing, the fact he'll be playing 19's Origin on Thursday night at Leichhardt Oval. He's been named as a starting prop. Raf Stratus actually got some really good minutes playing in the middle in that game, and I thought he had a very strong performance. But you referenced the try scored by was it Tiankum Brown?
The lone big man rep in the forwards that week.
Yeah, there was a real double punch with the forwards. I think it was Damascus Nemia that might have had the previous hit up and really punched hard at the Roosters line, and then they followed that up with the dummy half Ayash switching the ball back behind the play to Tiankum running back in behind the ruck, and it was he was unstoppable there. But look, it was a very good performance from Arpa Tweedle. He was instrumental, certainly in a number of the scoring plays. You referenced the wingers. Bo Newlands, his first one was off a Roosters drop ball. He was fed the ball pretty quickly after his centre partner picked it up and handed the ball to him, and he just took off downfield, couldn't be caught there. Second one was off a great crossfield kick from Arpa. And then you had the 3 tries from Muhammad Al-Madeen, and he's not just finishing tries as well. His work in yardage is outstanding. Like he gets the work done almost like Brian To'o, in that it's very physical the way he comes through in his yardage carries. So he's doing really well. He's got to be pushing for New South Wales Cup inclusion. But all in all, the team is playing with a lot of confidence, and hopefully they can continue on their winning ways this week. Both teams being out at Eric Tweedale Stadium at Granville this Saturday. Will be out there this week to cover the game. Mm-hmm. And we'll leave the team list and talking any more about it for a few minutes, but we'll get on to now the other Eels news.
Yeah, a couple of important headlines here for Parramatta Eels fans. One of the more odd ones you'll see as well coming up right now. Kelma Tuolangi, who was going to face the judiciary tonight contesting a grade 3 dangerous throw charge, which was going to see him sit out for a minimum of 4 weeks with the plea. Contesting and losing would lead to a 5-week absence. I think winning would put him, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 weeks, because we never got to find out. Because, like I said, one of the more bizarre twists, the Eels have now moved to a no contest plea, which means he's going to take a 5-week suspension. Obviously, that's terrible. But before you start booing and jeering at the club, there's even worse news. The reason they took the no contest is that he has a broken thumb which requires surgery, which is going to put him out for 6 to 8 weeks. So that Parramatta Eels injury ward is just getting bigger and thicker and more crowded by the week or by the minute even. So poor Kelmo, who was really starting to break out in that left edge position alongside Dylan Brown. He wasn't playing perfect football, but there was some real physicality to how he was attacking defences. And this is a big blow to both him and the team.
So what are we sitting at now? About 5 players that are unavailable long term?
Yeah, well, that segues perfectly into the injury news. With the club putting out a detailed update this week about who is not available and why and when they'll be back. So we have Jermaine Hopgood, who has a nerve issue in his back that came from State of Origin. He is being monitored right now and for further action to be finalised across the coming days. So I don't know if that's good or bad. We have Bowie Simonson out for the season with an ACL injury, of course. Kelma Tuolangi back rounds 22 to 24 provisionally with that thumb injury. Hayes Dunster with a Lisfranc fracture. Been a lot of those going around lately. I know everyone's been talking about the hamstrings, but the Lisfrancs have been hurting the Parramatta Eels a lot. He'll be back in round 20. Tony Mattielli for Hammy, rounds 18 to 19. Offiki Ogden, who tore his pec way back now, in the same time frame of return, rounds 18 to 19. Mike Acevo, who also has a hammy, is now expected to be available for the round 17 clash against Newcastle Knights. And this is not even considering players like Arthur Miller-Stephen and Richard Penasini, who have been unavailable for the entirety of season 2024. And you look at our backline, there's a pretty good chance that one or both of those guys would have been serious considerations through parts of this season. So, yeah, the Eels, they've been doing it tough. Not the only team this year, though. There's been a lot of injuries, but no doubt the Eels have been doing it tough.
So out of a 27-player roster, there are 6 players who will be unavailable for the Eels' next match.
Yes, assuming that Mike Acevo is good to go. And
yes.
Jermaine Hopgood is up in the air. We don't know about Mitchell Moses backing up from State of Origin as well. So there's some serious concerns about the team that could be taking to the field against Newcastle.
Well, even if Mitch Moses comes through the game, there will be an Eels game after that where he'll have to sit out if he's again selected in Origin. I think we all saw the condition that Clint Gutherson was in again on Saturday night. He looks like he's playing busted again. This is not good. It's just not good what the casualty ward is at Parramatta this year. I guess it goes without saying that we don't understand why we can't have 30 players, but who are we to know what's best? So, anyway.
Yeah, well, not a lot to be positive about there, but one thing we can cheer for next Wednesday is the selection of Mitchell Moses at halfback for the New South Wales Blues. Not a surprise here, fellas. I know that his form wasn't exactly sizzling, but he had a great game against Cronulla, had some strong moments against both Canterbury and the Roosters, while also not necessarily taking control of the game as much as he would have liked to. But he's earned selection for the Blues over Nico Hines. And I did appreciate Mitchell coming out today and giving Nico a bit of support as well. I think that was a very classy move. It wasn't so much an attack on his coach for making him a scapegoat, I think, but the media response to how Nico is being treated. But well done to Mitch, being a good teammate in that regard. Anything you guys want to talk about for that one, or you want to save that for an Origin preview?
I think we'll mostly save that for an Origin preview. Just to say congratulations to Mitch Moses again for making the Origin team. It's been a tough year for him this year. the fact that he is held now in such high esteem is a credit to him and the work that he's put into his game since he's come to Parramatta. And let's hope that he has a better end to the season than the start, and that next year is also injury-free.
Yep, and on that Origin front, we've got 4 youngsters in action on, is it this Thursday? No, next.
No, this Thursday.
This Thursday, yeah. So I was getting my my scheduling wrong. So we start with the women's under-19s, where the Eels are represented twice in the starting team, with Lindsay Tui, who is an NRLW player and also was outstanding in the Tasha Gal this year. She's at what I presume would be left centre. I don't know. Maybe she might be flipping sides here. But she's in the centres, and starting at lock forward is Riverly Alo, who was outstanding as well at lock forward for the Parramatta Eels. So well done to both of those girls there for their selection in their 19s team. And you can catch this one being broadcast on 9 Now, KO and Foxtel at 5:45 p.m. on Thursday. And that takes us to the other game that's also been part of that doubleheader there, which is the boys or men's under-19s. Eels, again, having 2 reps here. Could have had 3, given that Michael Gabriel was a part of our pathways back in the Harold Matts, and he's on the wing. But the 2 Eels repping the blue and gold in the light blue this week are Matty Arthur at dummy half. Well-deserved for Buds, and probably a year later than what he's honestly earned, given how well he played in the SG Ball last season. But there's a lot of players that sort of queue up for that Blues selection process, don't they? And they sort of have to share it around. But he gets the starting gig at number 9. Sam Tuivasa, who was there last year, probably wearing the same jersey in the 17, honestly, is on the interchange once again. So 2 Eels picked there. Well done, fellas. And again, you can catch this one being broadcast on 9 Now, KO and Foxtel. These are games also being played out at Leichhardt Oval if you want to get out there in person, with the conditions tipped to be good and weather fine. So a couple of good games of football there. And last year we saw Charlie Geimer have a pretty good game alongside Ethan Sanders and the other 2 Ethans of the Ferguson and Strange variety. So the Eels being well repped there, and hopefully all 4 players here can have good games, fellas.
Yeah, I'm sure that they will. Credit to all of the players for earning their selection in the New South Wales team. And I think the Raiders have shown in their recruitment that they keep a very close eye on the players that earn that particular jersey.
They've done a very good job this year poaching 19's Origin players. So
yeah, absolutely. So
great recruitment strategy.
Yeah, we just have to. I'm pretty sure Charlie Geimer's been locked in this year to a multi-year deal at the Eels, and Buds Arthur is under contract. But if ever there's a player that has to be upgraded and upgraded immediately, it's him, because he's not even on a development contract this year.
And that comes back to the importance of getting a new head coach so they can address this ASAP.
Yeah, and he's going to be. He only advances to a development contract next year, and the fact remains he should be in line to make an NRL debut this season. He should be top 30 next year, absolutely. So anyway, we'll see what transpires when a new coach is hopefully announced very soon. And mate, I think that brings us to a very quick run through of the team list, because there's no NRL. There's just the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flag team list for this week.
Yes, and the club was a little bit. I don't think the club's even officially named them yet, which is why the Team List Tuesday post is not up on TCT. But New South Wales Rugby League do have us covered, even though they got out a bit late too. Out at Eric Tweedow, 1:00 p.m. Jersey Flag. Eels look like this: Zach Hunter at fullback, Moe Alameddine, Bo Newlands on the wings. Multi-try scorers apiece last week. Antioch Faitala Mariner seems to have settled nicely into the centres alongside Raz Nunva, as that 1-5 really starts to shake itself out nicely. Arpa Tweedle and Matty Hunter in the halves. Front row sees Sam Tuivasa backing up from under-19's Origin alongside Tinkin Brown. Riley Smith back down from his Cup debut is a starting dummy half. Jock Brazel, Will Latu and Saxon Pryke are a good trio of back rollers right there. Interchange, Yaya Ayachi, Dom Destratus, Tyrese Lakenny and Damascus Nemia. 19th man or 18th man, he's in the 19 jersey. And the concussion sub is Raf Destratus. So a good team here. Not too much, what's the word I'm looking for here, change or rotation now, unforced. That's unforced, of that kind. Geez, that was an absolute cock up right there. But Eels enjoying some continuity, but they're taking on a good team in the Canberra Raiders, a team that absolutely ran rings around them, I think, when they met earlier this season. So top of the table team, 11 wins, 3 losses. This is going to be a real litmus test. And if you can steal this one, it's going to be a huge result in your march towards an unlikely finals berth.
Yeah, absolutely. Just interestingly as well, as you know, there's quite a few Queenslanders in this Eels jersey flag team. And I was looking and saw that Matthew Hunter is actually a Queensland player as well. So I don't think those Hunter boys are brothers. I think one was playing at the Panthers last year, and the others from up in Queensland. So as I said, if they're related, I wouldn't think they're brothers, given they're from different states. So
long lost cousins, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps. And now the reserve grade team, mate.
Yeah, part of that doubleheader out at Eric Tweedale, and of course we'll preview this later as well. But looking at this team as they back up from an 8-point win over the Sydney Roosters, fullback is Zach Sini, on the wings Lorenzo Mulatalo and Isaac Lumi, Jake Tungor and Morgan Harper in the centres, Joshua Lynn and Ethan Sanders, part of that young halves pairing that's doing really well. Front row sees Woody Urumu Greg and Makasi Makatoa starting, Joey Lussick, number 9, Matt Arthur not named to back up here. So putting him in some cotton wool after playing Origin, it looks like. He could be a late inclusion, though. Back row sees Dan Keir captaining the squad on one edge, Matt Dury on the other side. Luca Moretti moves from prop to lock forward this week. Manny Luke, Charlie Geimer, Brock Parker and Reece Alderton on the interchange. Tough gig for Charlie to get bumped from the starting team, but that is a lot of decent quality players in the starting roster ahead of him. I wonder how they'll use him this week, maybe on the edge, perhaps, given that you've got Parker and Alderton on the interchange there. But this one is 3 o'clock p.m. You can catch it on New South Wales Rugby League TV or via TCT. And, of course, we'll preview that one properly. Not too many surprises there, fellas. Maybe we could afford to send back some of the guys getting lesser minutes in NRL, but at the same time, I don't know if we're an injury or two away from a crisis. I think we're in a pretty full-blown crisis right now. So
it's a risk, isn't it?
Cotton wool is the doctor's orders this week, it looks like, for a lot of our players.
Yeah, but, mate, I think that's been a chunk of Eels news that we've just covered. I think it's just about time for your special moment that you have every week in the news podcast.
Yeah, it's the bye week, so we've got a lot of time to spare, a bit of time to explore. So let's put on some good frontier music and get into it.
I think you're going to have to talk us through this one, mate. But before you do, nice little drum and bass breakdowns at different points in that musical selection.
Yeah, it's a piece loosely inspired on the theme from Magnum Force. So obviously that being a Clint Eastwood classic, but it comes via way of another game. So this is a bit of a merging of two genres there, or two platforms between gaming and cinema. So yeah, it felt like it was fitting for the bye week if you're looking to explore the wide open expanses of Australia and getting around. But yeah, I'm also in a bit of a rut in terms of where to go with the intermission music, because it's a kind of reaching, do I go to meme music or do I go to weird music? And we went for the I don't know, weirder side this week.
Mate, I'm prepared for you to dive as deep as you want into the weird world.
Okay,
Just,
okay.
just take us there, mate. You're opening up new horizons for our listeners.
Alrighty, and speaking of new horizons, let's do the opposite and go to the old sunset of round 15 as we do our NRL recap going around the grounds. And we start over at PointsBet Stadium, aka Shark Park, where it was ended up looking like it was going to be a complete rout of the home team, but ended up being a 2-point thriller with the Dolphins winning 30-28 with Nico Hines missing a sideline conversion to take us to Golden Point. This game featured the Dolphins exploiting out of the blocks with tries of Plath, Farnworth, Bostock and Avarillo before one of the great solo efforts of the modern era, if not all time, as the hammer went. It was billed 95 metres, but I'm pretty certain he ran back to his own 1 metre line and made it damn near 100. Went the length of the field, beating pretty much the entire Sharks team to score an absolute barn burner of a try. So that was how he kicked off the round. Cowboys way too good for the Raiders this week, 34-16 victors. Rabbitohs, again, like the Dolphins, exploited out of the blocks against their opposition in the Broncos, up 16-0, I think, in as many minutes before only winning 22-12. And I'm sure Sixties has some grumblings about this game.
Oh, don't even. you know what I've been through this year in terms of just a very small NRL wager on 2 or 3 leg multis that are ripped. I'm literally ready to hop in the car and jump and head up to the TAB for the collect, and then something inevitably happens in the last 2 minutes of a game. So, and they did it to me again on the weekend, and this time it was South that stripped a massive collect from a $10 investment. So, yeah.
And unlike the Rabbitohs and the Dolphins before them, the Gold Coast Titans jumped out to an early lead against their opposition, the West Tigers, but then failed to do anything with it as they went from 10-0 leaders to 18-10 losers out at Leichhardt Oval. Warriors and Storm had a pretty fiery clash out at Go Media Stadium with the Storm prevailing 38-24. I think there was a couple of sin-bins in this one, if I recall correctly. Yeah, Montoya and Martins-Lesniak. So Warriors not doing themselves any favours there. We already talked about the Eels and the Roosters. Manly got revenge against the Dragons, 30-14. I think they were down to just 13 men at one point. So it was a pretty good effort from the Sea Eagles before the Panthers ended up edging out Newcastle 26-18. This was a pretty good game as well. Newcastle showing a bit of character to get into this contest before the Panthers flex some of their premiership heavyweight material there to win by 8 points. I don't know what you fellas want to talk about here. Another weird round in terms of tipping. We were talking to Mick Butner, of course, 60s, and he was lamenting how he was 0 from 4 coming into the Melbourne and Warriors game. And I think he got the Melbourne one right after the Warriors jumped out of the blocks. But I don't know how many pundits and tipsters are faring in this year's competition because it feels like every result's kind of a coin flip.
Yeah, look, the main one that I wanted to talk about was the Dolphins getting home over the Sharks. I thought that was a tremendous result for them, and especially to get it there at Shark Park. They might just hold on and make the finals this year, which will be a credit to them doing that in only their second year of existence. So, Clint, over to you. What were your takes?
Well, likewise, 60s. I wanted to touch on that Sharks Dolphins game. If ever there's a game that's kind of representative of the season, it's that. It's an unlikely team, on the basis of the team sheet, and obviously rugby league games aren't one on the team list. But getting over a fancied opponent, and quite often we've seen this happen. That fancied opponent also being the home side, only for the home side to reel them back in, and then for the unfancied opponent to find a way to get the victory in the end. This seesawing, unpredictable season. I feel like this game is a embodiment of exactly what John was just touching on. I didn't watch too much other football, to be perfectly honest. We had a little bit of laugh at the start of the show saying I was a bit apathetic towards our game when we're out at the stadium 60s. But likewise, John and I said in the show last week, it's been a frustrating season to watch, even just as a neutral. I'm not finding the level of enjoyment in watching other games that I have in previous seasons. And again, we mentioned part of that's because of the sheer unavailability of class players, and I'm absolutely a proponent of. I wish injuries didn't exist, and that suspensions are unnecessary evil because crimes can't go unpunished. But at the same time, that we just had the luxury of watching every team put their best 17 out every single week and seeing who the best is in that. Unfortunately, we're never going to get that. There's a myriad of contributing factors that prevent that from happening, and it's a squad game as opposed to just the game day 17. But yeah, like I felt that Sharks Dolphins game, it's kind of an embodiment of the season to date, and these seesawing effect contests where you're finding it hard to pick who the winner's going to be going in, and you're just as shocked by the result as you come out going, I didn't quite see that happening in that way.
But what I really need to convey to our listeners is just the expression on your face all the way through the Parramatta game. It almost didn't change. It was like it was near emotionless, and I mean, you could have been playing the best poker hand that anyone's ever played, because you just had this blank stare on your face all the way through the game. I think at times you were resting your chin on your hand, watching the game, just staring blankly at it, like completely emotionless. Even when the Eels were surging at different points, it was sort of like, it was almost like you were resigned to, it's not going to have a good outcome no matter what.
Yeah, I don't want to
just going
suggest
through
I'm
the motions of
Nostradamus
sitting
or
here.
anything. I don't want to suggest I'm Nostradamus or anything, but at the same time, yes, it did kind of feel like the result was inevitable, and I call it a coping mechanism, if anything. And I was bracing myself for what felt like the inevitable.
Okay, now John, we're just going to have a very quick look, aren't we, at the Origin teams, because we'll talk more about Origin in next Tuesday's news podcast, because that'll be on Origin Eve. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to double up really on this, but I guess what we should be looking at is anything that stands out to us from selections. Queensland's pretty much the same team, aren't they?
Yeah, Queensland, they have made a couple of changes by way of injury, with both Jermaine Hopgood, obviously Parramatta's back row, who made his debut, and Selwyn Cobbo, who I'm not sure if they ever disclosed what the injury was, but they've both been ruled out not this week, this coming game rather, with the Maroons making a couple of changes by bringing in Dane Gagai as their reserve, 18th man, but going for the senior option on the interchange of Felice Kafusi and Kurt Catewell coming onto their rotation. I don't believe, was Mo Fotuaika there in game one? He was?
Yes.
Jeez. Completely invisible for me. There you go. So I think they're the two major changes there, with the Queenslanders looking the same in the back line, with Walsh, of course, back in the one after getting nearly decapitated by Joseph Suaalii. Much of the discourse between the two teams focusing around that this week. And for the Blues, they've got a few changes too, with Maguire now afforded probably a team that looks closer to his preferred lineup from what would have been in the game one. Dylan Edwards back in the number one, overcoming that quad strain that he had in training camp. You got To'o and Lomax on the wings, Crichton and Latrell Mitchell in the centres. So Latrell getting the reprieve for his first game since either 21 or 22 series. He's been out in the wild for a little bit now. Luai and Moses partner in the halves. Jake Debojevic, God bless him, captains the team at prop forward. Reece Robson and Payne Haas in the front row there. And you got Martin, Crichton, and Cam Murray back in the starting lock forward position in the back row. Connor Watson, probably the biggest surprise of the selections, being picked as that Craig Wing-esque utility. Yo, Olakwatu, and Lenu rounding out the interchange. Barnett, the 18th man. Cam McInnes and Luke Keary, the extended roster. So, and Trent Loiro, part of that extended roster for Queensland. That's a bit of a surprise. So this one is, of course, down in Victoria at the MCG. And it'll be next Wednesday at 8:05 p.m. New South Wales sporting a pretty good record down at the G, surprisingly. There is no betting line here, I don't think. So I'm not sure if they're favourites, but based on results, they might end up being favourites for this one.
No.
I know. But if I recall correctly, Queensland don't have the greatest record down at the G. This might,
Oh, yeah, but let's
the
be
betting
serious.
agencies love to install New South Wales as a favourite. They love it. So you wait and see. But yeah, you see, Maguire gets, like I said, is close to his preferred lineup for game one. Queensland lose Cobbo, who was devastating for them off the interchange last game, but still a very good team regardless. I don't know about Kafusi and Capel on the interchange. I mean, obviously Capel's had some good origin moments, but does he bring the juice in rotation, or we have to wait and see? If anything, they're a little bit thin through the middle. Mo Fotuaika, the only recognised middle forward there on the interchange. I know that Kafusi has done a little bit for the Dolphins, and Capewell is more of out-and-out edge. Maybe, I mean, again, but the Blues on the other side, Yo's not a prop, he's a lock. And Olakau'atu is a behemoth, but he's an edge, a pure edge. So both teams are a little bit light in middle forwards here. So I thought maybe New South Wales could exploit that, but I don't know. What do you guys make of these two origin lineups before we wrap up with a couple of odd news pieces?
New South Wales still not crazy about the lineup. I think Mitch Moses will bring more than what Nico Hines did in the first game, but I still don't like the lack of middles in the New South Wales team. I think they might go marginally better than the first game, but I think in all likelihood Queensland's probably still got the edge in terms of the lineups for this one. Clint?
Yeah, I feel the same. And just to touch on what John was alluding to there with the middle, you'd imagine one of, if not both, Liam Martin or Angus Crichton might spend some time in the middle to accommodate Haumole Olakau'atu coming onto the field, if not just for a small period of time. Look, I think Queensland's just got the edge there. We spoke about this before in terms of following the stat line. I can't be any kinder than this, but like sheer amazement that Jake Trbojevic is not only in the team but the captain. It's kind of like the good guy. It's a good win for the good guys, but I don't know and personally don't believe it's the right decision. And I think that his inclusion is at the omission of of potentially better options that make New South Wales more competitive in that space. So I do like the inclusion of Cam Murray, and I'm glad that he's come straight back into the starting side. I think he's got the type of leg speed through the middle that you want. Likewise, he's a seasoned campaigner at this level of football. So, pending no send-off, I expect New South Wales to go considerably better, but at the same time, I think Queensland's quality will shine through still.
Nice summation, fellas. Okay, a couple of odd news articles to end up this podcast on, and we start with the Dolphins, where Tavita Pangai Jr. makes his triumphant return to rugby league. I never thought we'd see him again, fellas. Never. After he took a golden handshake from the Bulldogs to pursue a career in boxing. So well done, Tavita. He's been picked on the interchange for the Dolphins. Curious to see if he's going to stay committed to rugby league and maybe follow Wayne to South Sydney next year. Be very interesting to see. We all know he's a devastating player on his day if he's locked in. And I suppose Wayne Bennett's more or as likely as any coach in this competition to get the best out of him. So I actually do want to see how this plays out. It's very interesting. And then on a more unsavoury note, Sixties, you were chatting to me about this yesterday, and I completely forgot about it, but there's a young Cronulla player who's been censured and been provisionally banned from playing in the competition in New South Wales, I believe, based on some rather insane tattoos that are on his two quads. Player has not been named, obviously, for privacy reasons, but I don't even know if I could even repeat the tattoos.
No, you can't. I mean, a lot of people have probably seen it in news items around the NRL.
Extremely homophobic and well, one of them on his right leg is extremely homophobic. The other one is just silly about taking drugs and partaking in fornication. But I don't know how no one at the club knew about this at some point, because they're not they're not small tattoos.
No.
Look,
you have to think. You have to think that coaches, team managers, they would have seen this. It's the fact that they've given him the ultimatum of taping them up. I guess he could wear the bike pants underneath.
I would argue that
as well.
You can't represent the club unless you get them removed.
No, absolutely. That should be the stand.
I said this to Sixties yesterday. Yeah, sorry. I was going to say I said this to Sixties yesterday when he brought it to my attention. If it were me and I were in charge of Cronulla, I would say, look, there's clearly a difference in values, and your actions getting these tattoos contravenes our code of conduct. Here is a breach notice. You have X time to remove the tattoos, or your contract will be terminated.
Yeah.
Because once you go and get a tattoo, you're really committing to that, to putting that belief out there that you have when it is. And look, I know there are reactions out there that were like, oh, this is just his freedom of expression and, having a bit of fun with it and what have you. No, not in this instance, because he could go and get whatever tattoos that he wants when he's finished his rugby league career. When he's there and he's representing a club and he's representing a code, he's got an option about whether he actually wants to have a professional career.
Yeah.
And you'd have to think that if he's got to the stage that he's at, where he's at, we suspect he's been named as a junior, but we suspect that he's probably at that end of the junior pathway. So on the verge of maybe playing senior football. And if that's the case, you've got a bit of ability. So you're coming through that funnel that keeps narrowing and narrowing as you get towards the NRL. There's only a certain number of players. When you think about it, all the young people that start off playing rugby league and maybe have ambitions, and it's a very select few that get to the verge of fully professional football. If he's at that stage and he's taking it seriously, he shouldn't need to be told now.
No,
like
exactly.
He shouldn't be the sort of person that goes and gets that done as soon. Probably as soon as it had been seen, someone should have said to him, "Mate, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. This is a bad choice." And if he argued the point and said, "Oh, it's my body," or what have you, well, okay. You know what the consequence is.
Exactly. So, you can do that to your body, but there are consequences. Exactly.
Yeah, and the thing is, someone like, if this player was to go on, and let's say he just covered it up with bike shorts or tape or what have you, he wasn't made to remove it. Let's say he went on. At some point in his football life, he's going to have photos taken where these particular tattoos are. They will be seen. He'll be known for these tattoos. It won't be accepted. That's just the bottom line. It won't be accepted by the NRL. They wouldn't allow a player to get around with those tattoos on him. Yeah, so, exactly. He'd be well advised, get rid of them, ink over it, whatever you want to do, and then you've got the rest of your life when your football's over to make a goose of yourself.
Exactly. And on that sage life advice, I think we'll wrap things up, fellas. Well done for dispensing such a good wisdom 60s. Before we do wrap up, as always, a quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan, and Parramatta. Thank you guys for helping us out. 60s, Quint, always a blast to talk footy with you fellas. I imagine that next week's going to be fun as we preview the Origin game as part of the news podcast. Until then, don't get into any trouble with the Parramatta Eels on the bye in the NRL. And if you're out there on Saturday, we'll catch you for the flag and the cup. Otherwise, enjoy your weekend.
And go you mighty Eels.